I never imagined that a peaceful sunny afternoon by the pool would end with me facing two police officers for the crime of sitting by my own pool. It sounds absurd. It should have been a joke. But it wasn't. If you believe me, it's true, comment number 1, and if you still think it's fiction, comment number 2. My name is Troy Matthews. 29 years old, software engineer, non-smoker, no pets, no loud music after 9 p.m., the kind of neighbor any community should be glad to have. I live simply. I avoid drama. And I had just moved into Maple Grove Estates 3 weeks ago, a quiet, clean place with security, an HOA, and, most importantly, a beautiful pool just steps from my house. I purchased 47C at an HOA-organized real estate auction. The previous owner lost it due to unpaid community maintenance fees. Working remotely without family ties, I sought a peaceful place to work, read, and occasionally swim to relax. I thought I'd found my little paradise. Until that fateful Saturday afternoon. The temperature neared 90 degrees. The sun cast a golden hue over the neatly aligned beige houses. Dressed in shorts and a t-shirt, carrying a novel and a water bottle, I headed to the pool with my resident card around my neck, per regulations. A few others were sunbathing, paying me no mind. I chose a lounge chair by the pool, opened my book, and planned to spend 2 hours doing absolutely nothing. Everything was serene, until the sound of plastic clogs striking the concrete echoed from afar. Without looking up, I sensed someone approaching with an aura of authority. Then, a sharp, authoritative voice pierced the air. "You there, what are you doing here?" Reddit. I glanced up to see a woman in her early 50s. Meticulously dyed blonde hair, oversized sunglasses covering half her face, clipboard in hand, a figure unmistakable. An HOA Karen, the kind I thought existed only on Reddit. Removing my sunglasses, I replied calmly, "I'm sorry, what did you ask?" "Who are you? Where do you live? I've never seen you here before." "I live at 47C, I responded, pointing toward my house. "I just moved in." "Impossible," she retorted, as if I'd claimed to be an astronaut. 47C was foreclosed and sealed. No one lives there. Suppressing a sigh, I maintained my composure. I bought it at an auction a month ago. The sale was authorized by the HOA office." She frowned. "Who let you in here?" I showed my resident card hanging around my neck. She glanced at it briefly, then dismissed it with a wave as if it were trash. YouTube. +1. YouTube. +1. That card could be fake. I never approved anyone moving into that unit. A chill ran down my spine, not from fear, but from something else, the suffocating presence of someone trying to control this small world with a HOA president badge and a red pen. "I'm calling the police," she declared, as if announcing a state of war. "You're trespassing in the amenities area. And I have the authority to do so?" I looked her straight in the eye, fully removing my sunglasses for the first time. "You're calling the police to remove someone from the pool, when that person is exactly where they're allowed to be?" She didn't respond. Instead, she pulled out her phone and began recording. Name? Reddit. +1. TikTok. +1. Troy. The last name? The Matthews. All right, Troy Matthews. You'll regret this uncooperative attitude. I'm Karen Hartley, HOA president, and I'll protect this community at all costs. Karen pressed 911, actually called. At that moment, I realized this wasn't about a pool chair or a resident card anymore. This was about power, real and imagined. Chapter 2: When the police enter the scene. I always thought police showed up for accidents, thefts, or brawls. I never imagined I'd be there suspected just for sitting by the pool in a white t-shirt, reading a novel and breathing. YouTube. But life can be quite humorous if you can still laugh. Karen stood less than 6 feet away, phone pressed to her ear like a battlefield commander. Her voice rang out clearly. Yes, officer? There's a stranger here. He's trespassing in the private pool area. Looks very suspicious. No clear identification. I fear he's impersonating a resident. Could be dangerous. Karen hung up, then turned to me like she had just secured a court order. Police are on their way. I hope you're ready with your explanation. I leaned back, eyes on the cloudless blue sky, silently counting to 3. The calm I'd maintained since moving into this place was being stretched thin, like a taut bowstring. And Karen, with her oversized sunglasses and a clipboard thick with citations, had just drawn the arrow. 13 minutes later I heard it. The distant wail of a siren echoing from the entrance of our gated community. A white and blue patrol car pulled up slowly by the pool gate. 2 officers stepped out, one male, one female, both wearing the kind of blank, measured expression that said they'd seen far too much and still weren't paid enough. Mounted to their chests were black bodycams blinking quietly. Karen lit up like a Christmas tree. Go over here. Officers, over here. I remained seated, one leg crossed over the other, flipping the page of my novel like I was sipping afternoon tea. The officers approached. The male officer, tall and solidly built, spoke first in a calm, neutral tone. Good afternoon. Who placed the 911 call? That would be me. Karen chirped, practically skipping toward them. A Karen Hartley, HOA president of this community. I spotted a suspicious individual trespassing in our private pool area. He has no valid ID and claims to be a resident, but he's not listed anywhere in our records. I gave a small wave. Hey, hello, officers. I'm the accused, apparently. Name's Troy Matthews. I live here, Unit 47C. The 2 officers exchanged a quick look. 47C? The male officer asked. Impossible. Karen barked before I could answer. That unit was foreclosed and sealed off. I manage the resident list. He's not on it. I stood calmly, reached into my bag, and pulled out the holy trinity of legal proof. My government-issued ID. My resident access card issued by the HOA. My notarized purchase agreement for Unit 47C. And, cherry on top, a receipt for HOA dues, bearing the signature of one Karen Hartley herself. The female officer reviewed the documents carefully. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, but she said nothing. Just passed them to her partner and nodded. Then the male officer turned to Karen and asked, matter-of-factly, Ma'am, is this your signature on this receipt? Karen opened her mouth, then shut it. For the first time since she stormed up to me, she looked cornered. The silence was almost spiritual. Her hands clenched. Her eyes darted between the officers and me, as if searching for a reset button in this unraveling simulation she thought she controlled. She knew. The performance was slipping. The threats no longer held weight. The clipboard had lost its bite. And the worst part? It was all happening in front of an audience. And then, just as I'd predicted, she switched tactics. Fast. Desperate. From righteous HOA protector to the vulnerable woman threatened by a dangerous man. Karen's voice trembled carefully. The officers, I may have left out some details. I narrowed my eyes. Here it comes. When I approached him, to ask about his residency, he said some very inappropriate things. Stood very close. I felt intimidated. Maybe even harassed. Time stood still. I stood up slowly. Not to yell. Not to threaten. But because my patience, like her lies, had just crossed a line. What the hell are you doing? Karen tilted her head, panting like she was in a bad soap opera. He moved toward me. I had to back up. I felt unsafe. I have the right to feel unsafe, don't I? The female officer raised a hand in standard protocol. Sir, please take a step back. I raised both hands, nodding. But my voice didn't drop an inch. She's making this up? I never got near her. There are witnesses here. And more importantly, your body cams have been rolling since the moment she made the call. The officers exchanged another look, this one sharper. The female officer tapped her radio and spoke quietly into it. I knew they were requesting playback. I took a slow breath, lowered my voice, and spoke loud enough for all 3 to hear. Karen, you can't win this. And now you're trying the dirtiest play in the book. You're hoping to destroy me with a false accusation, because you couldn't stand losing control. I gestured at the bodycam blinking on the male officer's chest. But you forgot one thing. The truth is being recorded. And truth doesn't shout, it shows. Karen was shaking now. Not theatrically. Not for effect. Genuinely. Because the officer's radio crackled. And the playback review had just come through. The male officer's tone shifted. Ma'am, we've reviewed the footage from the time we arrived. There was no confrontation. Mr. Matthews remained seated. He did not approach you or make any threatening gestures. Karen snapped back, voice rising. But before they got here, he said things. I swear he called me. You're changing your statement, ma'am, the female officer cut in, voice now icy. You initially said he confronted you during the encounter. Now you're alleging it happened before we arrived. Do you have any witnesses? Karen's mouth opened. Closed. Nothing. Ms. Hartley, the officer continued, if you persist with unsubstantiated claims, we will be required to document this as an intentional false report intended to damage someone's reputation. The predator had become the prey. Karen staggered backward slightly, grasping for any moral high ground still in reach. I just wanted to protect the community. I got overwhelmed. I apologize if I gave the wrong impression. I clutched my bag tighter to stifle the bitter laugh rising in my throat. A minute ago, she was calling for my arrest. Now, she was sorry for the misunderstanding. I stepped forward, not too close, but enough to meet her eyes, clear and cold. You know why you think I'm dangerous, Karen? She didn't answer. I did. Because I'm not afraid of you. I don't bow to a name tag, a clipboard, or your empty threats. And that terrifies you. Karen clenched her fists but said nothing. Her eyes no longer fierce, only held fear. I don't know who uploaded the video first. Maybe it was that college kid sitting in the far corner of the pool deck, pretending to scroll TikTok while secretly filming the entire scene. Or maybe it was the old lady sunbathing, the one who muttered, about time someone stood up to her. Whoever it was, the outcome was the same. 30 minutes after the police left, I got a message from a friend who works in media. Troy, are you the guy Karen called the cops on for suspiciously sitting by his own pool? Dude, this video is blowing up on Twitter. I opened Twitter and typed. #poolside_Karen. Boom. There it was, a 4-minute video clipped straight from the police bodycam, already pushing 300,000 views by late afternoon. The title from the original uploader said it all. Karen calls the cops on suspicious man by the pool, turns out he owns the house. Then she accuses him of sexual harassment. Police clap back. Below it, thousands of comments flooded in. Brained, she really thought HOA power was stronger than the law. Skull false 911 call plus fake assault claim equals self-destruction speedrun. Fired, this bodycam footage belongs in Ethics 101. I closed my eyes, leaned back in my chair, and took a long breath. Part of me felt amused. Part of me felt sad. But mostly, I felt something bigger. Justice had begun to speak, loud and clear, in its own modern language. Karen didn't speak publicly right away. But the internet didn't wait for her. 8 p.m. A Reddit post went viral in r/HOA nightmares from a user named Maple Truth. I live in Maple Grove Estates. Karen Hartley is our HOA president. After today's incident, I can't stay silent anymore. The post was a detailed 1,500-word expose that read like a greatest hits list of Karen's abuses of power. She fined an elderly veteran for flying an American flag too many days in a row. She ordered a single mom to take down her kid's backyard swing because it disrupted community aesthetics. She allegedly threatened to report an Asian American family to immigration services for leaving shoes outside the door. The post hit 45,000 upvotes in just 5 hours. And soon, the replies poured in from residents of other HOAs, all with eerily similar stories. Karen is the perfect poster child for corrupt HOAs. We've got one just like her in my neighborhood. People like this think their tiny bit of power gives them a license to act like dictators. Finally, Thank you to whoever Troy is for not backing down. 9:15 p.m. Next door, the hyperlocal social app, erupted with headlines. Urgent, motion to remove Karen Hartley as HOA president. There were no honorifics. No Ms. Hartley. Just her full name in all caps, shared with urgency like a weather alert. Karen was no longer the woman maintaining order. She had become the cautionary tale. The neighborhood tyrant finally seen for who she truly was. 10:32 p.m. I got a message from my attorney, who also happens to be handling the class action lawsuit several residents, including myself, had quietly built over the past year against the HOA's financial mismanagement and abuse of power. Troy, this video? It's gold. Their legal team is in full panic mode. Tomorrow we'll file to submit this as supplemental evidence. I texted back. I didn't even do anything. I was just sitting in my own chair. 11:04 p.m. The Maple Grove HOA Facebook page went dark. The most recent post? A half-hearted apology. We apologize for recent misunderstandings. The HOA board will conduct an internal review of the situation. No mention of Karen. No ownership. No accountability. But no one needed an apology anymore. They wanted Karen gone. I set my phone down. The warm light of my house at 47C glowed softly behind me. On my kitchen counter sat the book I hadn't been able to finish reading that day, thanks to you-know-who. I poured myself a cold glass of tea, stepped out onto the porch, and gazed out at the now-empty pool deck. That place, just hours ago, was a battleground of petty power gone too far. A battlefield that Karen thought she ruled. But not anymore. Me? I never wanted war. I just wanted peace. But if peace has to be protected by truth, by video, by social media, and by staying calm in the face of false accusations, then yes, I'm ready to do it again. I arrived early. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to watch Karen the moment she walked in, watch the layers of false authority peel away from someone who had clung to power for far too long. The Maple Grove Community Hall was unusually quiet. No chatter. No murmurs. Just a heavy silence hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. The chairs were arranged in a U-shape, the center table empty, waiting for the board. I took a seat near the end, my file folder neatly stacked in front of me, eyes fixed on the podium. 7:01 p.m. Karen walked in. Every gaze in the room locked onto her, not with reverence, but with anticipation. People weren't there to listen. They were there to see if she'd survive what was coming. She tried to smile. Tried to walk with confidence. But her shoulders were stiff, her grip on her binder so tight I could hear the plastic crackle as she set it down. Thank you all for coming, as she began, voice slightly higher than usual. Today we'll review the quarterly financial report and discuss updates to several community regulations. I raised my hand. No need to wait for her to finish. Karen paused. She couldn't shut me down like she used to. Not anymore. Mr. Matthews, go ahead. I stood and opened my file, nothing fancy, no dramatic flair. Just facts. A copy of my property deed. HOA fee receipts. Email correspondence. And most importantly, an official transcript from the police department confirming Karen Hartley had made a false 911 call, along with the bodycam footage that had gone viral. I spoke slowly. Clearly. Each word deliberate. Last week, HOA President Karen Hartley called the police to remove me from the community pool, despite my being a lawful resident with full access rights. When that failed, she escalated her accusation, falsely alleging I had harassed her. Fortunately, the responding officer's bodycams captured everything. And as of today, that video has been viewed over 2 million times across multiple platforms. I paused. I didn't come here to seek an apology. I came to call for immediate action, the removal of Karen Hartley from her position as HOA president for crossing both ethical and legal boundaries. The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. Silence spoke louder than outrage. Karen stood. I expected a rebuttal. What I got was a woman with nothing left in her arsenal. She tried to sound composed. Guy was simply trying to enforce rules. Mr. Matthews is new. I didn't know who he was. I acted within my responsibility. I nodded slowly. Very well. Then we'll also act within ours. I turned to the remaining 3 HOA board members. According to Article 5.2 of the HOA bylaws, if credible evidence is presented of misconduct that harms residents or the community's reputation, the board may vote to remove the president without waiting for a full assembly. One board member nodded. Another opened the bylaw book and confirmed. Karen remained standing. Not objecting. Not apologizing. Because deep down she knew she was out of moves. The vote took 5 minutes. 3 board members. 1 community proxy vote. 4-0 unanimous. Karen said nothing. She collected her folder, folded her oversized sunglasses, and stepped down from the podium like a stage actress at the end of a poorly reviewed play. No one clapped. No one stopped her. No one followed. And when the door closed behind her, the room stayed quiet, but this time it was a peaceful silence. I remained seated looking around. No one spoke, but everyone knew. This wasn't my victory. This was the end of an era. An era of intimidation, arbitrary fines, HOA notices filled with passive aggression and fear. Karen wasn't booed. She wasn't shouted down. But the pure, unflinching silence that greeted her exit? That was the real verdict. And it was louder than anything I could have said. And just like that, the woman who once ruled an entire neighborhood like it was her personal kingdom walked out of the meeting hall, no applause, no farewell, no one following behind. Not because people hated her to the core, but because, for the first time, everyone saw her for who she really was, no mask, no authority, no manipulation. And I can't help but wonder. If you were in my shoes, the person falsely accused of sexual assault, thrown out of his own pool, humiliated for simply existing, would you forgive? Should I stop at her removal from power? Or should I take this further to ensure she truly faces justice? Some might say let it go. Move on for your own peace. But does justice ever come if those who do wrong get to walk away untouched? I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were me? Drop your thoughts below because I believe justice begins with our voices.